Hello, everyone, and welcome to ETRAGE's webinar on ETRAGE WTParts solutions. Starting off on a side note, if your company uses Windchill but hasn't implemented WTParts yet, join us in October for a session on how WTParts can positively affect your business. Again, welcome. We're so glad you're here. As always, everyone is muted. Please use the Q&A icon for questions, and we'll answer those towards the end. A recording of today's webinar will be available on our YouTube channel. I'm Sinead, and joining me today is Shei, who will be leading our demonstration. We each bring over a decade of experience in the PTC PLM space. Our shared focus as an organization is on understanding our clients' business challenges and delivering tailored, effective solutions such as ETRAGE WTParts. At ETRAGE, our focus is on driving continuous PLM adoption by addressing the needs of your systems, your management, and your end users. Today's agenda is all about helping you get more out of your Windchill PLM by expanding access to WTParts with just a few clicks within the ETRAGE publisher and viewer. ETRAGE is a global company with over 20 years of experience helping PLM adoption extend beyond the engineering department and across your entire enterprise. We understand that adoption isn't a one-time event, but is truly a strategic, ongoing process focused on continuous improvement and evolving over time. As a PTC technology partner, ETRAGE develops innovative software and service solutions, helping companies move towards a complete digital footprint and away from paper, as well as siloed databases. And with that, Shei, I hand it over to you.
All right, wonderful. Thanks, Sinead. So I'll go ahead and dive into the meat of the discussion here. And we'll talk about, in this case, how the ETRAGE, WT solution helps. And I'll start off by giving some context and talk about, today the push with businesses and industries, particularly from durable good manufacturers, is typically, a push for digital transformation or Industry 4.0. You've probably heard those acronyms, tossed around, quite a few times. But there are challenges to that, right? And some of those, again, this is not an exhaustive list, but some of those being things like, workforce, shortages and skills gaps, right? The fact that, manufacturers often talk about how it's difficult to find skilled labor, right? And then when you find them, you can't retain them long enough before they move, and so there's a lot of turnover, right? And of course, there's supply chain disruptions and rising costs. Again, in the media currently, there's a lot of talk about tariffs, right? And so again, manufacturers are facing cost pressures, right? Price pressures, which means it's difficult to maintain profitability in some cases, right? And again, there's also then the push for digital transformation, right? So again, pushing all the PLM data and digital data down throughout the entire enterprise, right? And not also to then mention, there's also cybersecurity risks as well. So there's threats to IP theft, whether it's through hackers and or data that's being stored in unsecure databases or systems like network drives, as an example, right? And so all of those mean that it can be very difficult to actually truly adopt digitally the digital transformation across your entire enterprise. And so functionally speaking, manufacturers use the acronyms, but still end up relying on old, school, practices of pen and paper, for example, or again, unsecured databases as a result, right? Or oftentimes then it becomes, an email back and forth to, another colleague who may be in the know as to for that person to then send the required information, right? And so some of those consequences will then be, again, if you look at it from the business perspective, it will ultimately be, a decline in product quality and consistency, right? So if I'm someone on the shop floor and I need to, go to one particular area to look for, maybe a drawing that I'm going to be manufacturing, and then I have to go find or hunt down from a separate area or send an email or a Teams message to someone to get me my work instructions, right, of how this thing should be manufactured. All of a sudden, if the more I'm hunting to find something, the more delays, right? And if I cannot find what I need, or if I can't find the right version that's not out of date, right, or not obsolete, that could lead to a lot of decline in product quality. I may be manufacturing something based on an out of date instruction set, right? Again, if this is something that may be stored on a network drive, as an example, right? Or another example could be, if I am if I'm not given all the tools I need in order to perform my work at that time, right? So again, if I'm a quality inspector and I have a 2D drawing and I'm expected to do a characteristic inspection using the ferro arm and inspecting all the characteristic dimensions of the actual part in front of me, right? Well, oftentimes it helps if I have the CAD model from which I can extract nominals and then compare variations that way, right? If I don't have the CAD object, my work has now become easily, 5 times more difficult in terms of just the time it would take for me to manually recreate those nominals within the metrology software, right? And so again, ultimately leading to production delays and revenue loss, or slower time to market, right? And this is something we've heard, in many cases within businesses. I think one of the customers I've spoken to has mentioned how their competitor can get products to market within 3 months, and for this particular company, it's taken them 11 months to get products to market. Now, I know for the audience listening to this, your mileage may vary depending on your industry and your products, but ultimately it's still the same thing. It's the fact that there's a push to get products out the door quicker, right? But the way you do business today, with the gaps in the digital thread, means that essentially there's no way to close those gaps, I should say, and get product out the door faster, right? And ultimately, all of that then leads to escalating operational costs, right? Again, if you have a same example, a quality inspector spending 5 times longer to do the same amount of work, then that's at a bare minimum higher labor costs, right there. Not even to then talk about additional costs that stem from that, right? And again, if you have trouble hiring workers, then you could have inexperienced workers, where if you don't have the right policies and procedures right in front of them that they can just immediately select and follow, then they could be doing the wrong thing, and then you have again, escalating costs, whether you have to then scrap or do rework on items that were incorrectly worked on, right? So all that being said, is many of the reasons why we developed the ETRAGE suite of solutions, right? And the WTParts solution is just one more piece of that tool set that essentially glues everything together, right? And so I'll take a moment here to pause and show you here with a quick demo what the WTParts solution does and how you can use this in your enterprise. All right. So I will start off first with the ETRAGE viewer, right? And for context, this is a viewer that allows anyone in the enterprise, right? So it could be engineering, or it could be beyond just engineering. It could be quality, it could be manufacturing, it could be people on the shop floor, it could be people in marketing as well, right? Or purchasing as well. So anyone in the enterprise to view and access any PLM data or PLM derivative, or PLM derived data, I should say. And so as an example here, I will start off and take a look and search for a particular object. Right? You'll notice, first thing you'll notice as well is that it's a very simple and clean, almost Google-like interface, right? Where it's very easy to just, search, and only the objects you're looking for will be presented to you, right? Now, in addition to, many of these objects have, specific file formats that are included in them. So in this case, some of these have DXFs and PDFs, and some of these have step files. And all of these, and some of these are related to, for example, a drawing. We typically have a PDF, right? 3D models, like in parts, we typically have step files, and all of these are completely customizable, by the way. So if you want step and IGES, or if you the file formats over here, what gets published, how it gets published, when it gets published, all of this is completely customizable. And so if you look at this and you think, oh, I like that, or we do something a little bit different, you can reach out to us. It's all completely customizable. But in any case, what I'll point out here is the new source type we added, which in this case is a WTPart. Right? And if I go in here and I select on that, you will notice that primarily has a lot of metadata, but it also concatenates together all the different related objects, of this one object here. So this shows, okay, for this WT part, this is the actual PRT file, right? So the CAD, right? If I want to download that, it's as easy as clicking this one-click button here to download the step file immediately to my computer. If I need access to the drawing, right, this is a related drawing with that, and I can see whether it's a DXF or PDF of the drawing. Right? But also, by the way, this also has paint specifications, right, that have been attached as a related object to the WT part, right? And this is the beauty of using WT parts and implementing parts management in Windchill. It's the fact that you can now have a lot more than just the CAD data, a lot more than just the PRTs and the ASMs and the DRWs, right? You can have, specifications documents, test documents. You could have manufacturing work instructions. You could do, EBOM to NBOM transformations and all those many other, things that you can use when you implement WT parts, right? But in this particular case, if we're just talking about, related objects, right? We can extract those from Windchill and display them for you right here in the ETRAGE viewer, right? So that way, this does not result in an email to someone to say, hey, can you please find me the specifications I should be painting to, right? This does not result in going to dig in a network drive to find that information, right? It's a very easy one-click to select that, and the operator can see, okay, how they should be painting this shaft. Right? So another example I'll take a look at real quick here. Is this. And of course, like in the other case as well, the spindle, we can do a very quick search, find that. Again, if I take a look at the WT part of that, again, this shows linked to it, right? Any drawings that are associated to that, any part files associated to that, all in one clean and easy to use interface, right? If I want to download all of those items together at one time, it's as easy as clicking one button to download all the viewables. All downloads from the ETRAGE viewer, by the way, I should mention, all come time-stamped as well. So that's why you'll notice, documents with, a date and a timestamp as well. So that way, anyone that's using the particular document can always know, when that particular, version of the document that they downloaded was downloaded, essentially, right? Or I guess the document they're looking at, I should say, was downloaded. All right, so I'll take a look at a couple others. So over here, I'll say, do a quick search. I'll find the rear axle assembly. And again, for this one here, there's a new source type, the WT part. I will go ahead and select for that. And again, you'll notice in this case, there's a lot more information here. So yes, I have the assembly. Yes, I have the drawing, but I also have additional documentation. So, production test specifications, right? Work instructions as well, right? And again, these are things where I can easily, again, download all of these, or I can just one-click select to download and view those work instructions as an example, right? Yeah. And right here, that takes me to the object, which in this case is the work instruction document, right? I can select that to download that as a Word document and start to view that immediately. Right? Now, to give you, a flavor of why this is important, right? Oftentimes, people don't use Windchill, right, for these kinds of documents, because if I try to do the same thing in Windchill, right? So this is Windchill over here. I'm using the WT part for the rear axle, right? Number one, it's a much more complex interface with millions of buttons. It's almost like you're looking at the cockpit of an airplane, right? And you're wondering, okay, well, which button do I pick? I'm looking for work instructions. Where do I find that? I'm looking for a button that says work instructions. I don't see that, right? First, I have to go ahead and find little objects. Then I have to know, to look in my reference documents table. And even here, you would think, oh, if I pick on this, it'll download it for me. No, if I select on that, it takes me to another page. And within this page, I have to look at for one very tiny glyph right here. That's where I can download it from, right? So again, the beauty is we're taking all of the data from Windchill, right? And we're still exposing it to you in a very nice, easy to use interface, right? Where you can download all of this data in one table in one go, right? All right. As another example, or another use case of this, and actually before I dive out of that use case, I'll mention it here again, just to tie it all together. It's the fact that, again, if I'm a shop floor technician, right, or if I'm a quality inspector, as an example, right, or whichever persona I am, right, if I can search for the axle, right? If let's put it this way, I mean in the paint booth, right? I can search for the axle, and if I want to see how to paint this axle or the specifications required for that, it's a very one click within ETRAGE viewer. Click, download that paint specification, and I can start to read and know, okay, what instructions are there for how to paint this. If I'm assembling this axle, my work instructions are right here for me easily. If there are any test specifications I need to adhere to, it's right in here as well, right? So again, that all shows just the simplicity and ease of use of how you can still, spread this digital data across the enterprise, right? Okay. Next is going to be also the fact that we can use this WT-part functionality as well to also link together, particularly when you talk about family table documents, right? And so one of the very common use cases we see is customers will say, well, we have an item, call it maybe something like a harness, right? That's family table controlled, right? And there's maybe 3 or 4 variants. Maybe there's one that's 1 foot long, 2 feet long, 3 feet long, 4 feet long, right? And of course, they don't want to create new drawings for each of those items, so they create one drawing, attach it to the family table generic, right? And within that drawing, they have a table that displays all the instances of that object, right? Well, within the bill of materials, it'll have listed in there, instance 3, which is in that case 3 feet long, for example, right? But then the operator goes to go find that, in their view, and they can't see that. So then typically that ends up with a message to engineering saying, hey, the bill of materials is asking for, instance 3, but I don't see that in here. Can you help me find that? Not knowing that they need to go find the generic, and then the generic will tell them what the instance is, right? Well, in this case, with the WT part solution now, with in the ETRAGE viewer, it's as simple as we're looking at, in this case here, this drawing, in this case, a WT part of that. And for this drawing, you'll notice this drawing is linked to all these 4 WT parts, right? The generic plus all 3 instances, right? It's the same drawing that's linked to them. So whether the bill of material calls for, fastener A1, right? That is linked to this drawing 40, right? Whether it calls for fastener A3, that is also linked to the same drawing 40 as well, right? And so then it's as easy as just them selecting that drawing 40, right? Again, you'll notice like in this case, fastener A1, that's a CAD file of that if they need it. That's a drawing file of that, right? Drawing 40, right? It's easy for them to go ahead and pick on that, select that, and you can quickly see, okay, well, this drawing 40 is a drawing of the generic, right? But it has clearly listed in this case, hey, this particular drawing applies to these instances, right? Family table instances, right? So again, this is one easy way where we can alleviate the need for, again, emails back and forth to engineering saying, hey, can you please, explain what you mean by this? I can't find this required documentation over here, right? Users can now easily self-serve right within the ETRAGE viewer. And by the way, I should pause here and take a look. When I say viewers, users can easily self-serve, right? The ETRAGE viewer is a role-based and access-controlled environment. So meaning you have to have a login, right? And number two, your access is governed by your role as well, right? And so if I take a look over here, I can show how there are different permissions, right, that can be set. And for each of those permissions, you can also specify what kind of data people have access to as well. So as an example, if I'm in marketing and I don't need a drawing file, I don't need to have to see drawings in here. I don't need to have drawings in here, right? But if I need a step file because I want to pull it into my rendering software to render product images off of, then I can get a step file, right? And you can then group those users as well, right? By role as well, right? And so in this case, you can have different usernames, right? And for different users, whether it's purchasing, whether it's even an external supplier, right? Whether it's people from quality, people from design, people from manufacturing, right? You can have as many users as you want across the entire enterprise, right? All plugged in, being able to access all the data they need right from within the ETRAGE viewer, right? Now, the last piece of the demo I'll show you here is the fact that is how all this data gets into the viewer to begin with, and all of that is due to what we call in this case our PSW, right, or publisher, right, and that can sit on an external server, right, and number one, what I'll show you, what you're looking at here is the fact that in this case for the document processing, we're taking a look at the WTPart, and that's what we're processing in this case. We're grabbing the metadata from that, and we're collecting all this additional documentation, right? Now I show this to say that in many companies, when people start to implement WTParts, it's because you're going to use that as an avenue to push data from the PLM system, from Windchill, to the ERP system. In fact, that's probably the only way you can push BOM data from straight from PLM to ERP is through WTParts, right? And what I'm showing you here is the fact that we can configure this to where the publisher itself, even without the viewer, the publisher itself can gather data from Windchill and push that data, the BOM data, straight to your ERP system, right? So that's an option that we can also offer as well, right? And of course, the publisher works with any number of different CAD packages that Windchill supports as well, even beyond what's shown in here, right? And so we're not just beholden to just Creo alone. So if you're a multi-CAD organization, we can totally serve your needs as well. Right? All right. So all that being said, that kind of covers it for the WTPart solution and how you can still use this to take all the same product data that you have that again was previously inaccessible to non-heavy Windchill users, right? And distribute that across the enterprise, right? Now, why is that valuable, right? So, well, ultimately, it's the fact that number one, you can start to, increase production quality and consistency, right? Because you can have the right information for the right users right at their fingertips, without having to hunt and search and find, right? You can start to decrease production delays, right? And decrease increase time to market, I should say, right? I have cases where customers are saying, our quality department says to do a PPAP, it's taking us several weeks, and part of that or within that is typically someone sitting there measuring each and every dimension or characteristic of an actual part in front of them, and then they have to manually spend 5x more time recreating the nominals in the metrology software, right? Instead of being able to go to the ETRAGE viewer, download a step file or the native CAD file, which already has the nominals in there, and then it's as simple as comparing nominals to actuals to find the deviation and then see if that part is within spec. You're able to do that 5 times quicker, and you're on to the next part. So again, you can get to market quicker, right? You can decrease production delays, right? And on the operational side, right, you can reduce operational costs and for example, scrap and rework, right? Because you have the right rev controlled information displayed within the ETRAGE viewer, right? Say, for example, something is obsolete from PLM, from your windshield system, the ETRAGE viewer, removes that from display, or can be configured to remove that from display. So that way, people don't even see that, right? If something is undergoing an ECN, for example, you can also, communicate that within the ETRAGE viewer as well. So that way, they don't see that and start to, cut steel or make a change to something that, for example, may now be under review, right? And should not be currently manufactured, right? And so, all that being said, there's 2 calls to actions, right? Number 1 is, if you're a company that's currently using Windchill and you're not using WTParts, right? You can reach out to us and we can offer a free consultation on how you can start to implement, WTParts and the benefits within the organization that you can expect, right? Or if you, even if you want to ask, well, why should I use this, right? What are the implications and what are the benefits, right? Again, these are conversations that we have with customers all the time, and we'd be more than happy to walk you through that. Second is, again, for trials of all the ETRAGE software solutions, we have that all the time, right? And so we have many customers that see this and say, you know what, I've seen enough, I understand it, I see the value, I know it works for me. How can I try this out in my system with my own data, right? Absolutely, we always welcome trials. Reach out to us, and we're more than happy to set it up. We can give you like a limited set of data, and you can test it out with users within your company, so that way you can get to prove the value immediately, right? All right, at this point now, I'll pause here, and we'll see if there are any questions. Yep, come up.
Thank you, Shay. Yeah, if you have any questions at this time, please use that question mark icon and go ahead and type away. Shay, while we give people time to type that out, let's look at some of our upcoming events and webinars. So if you're not aware, ETRAGE does have bi-weekly webinars, and we will continue to do that through the fall. You can see some of our upcoming webinars cover simplifying your data migration with the ETRAGE bulk loader, as well as looking at IT and networking issues that are slowing down your Windchill or your enterprise with potential workarounds. And then, as I had mentioned earlier, in October, we will cover WTParts best practices. And then additionally, we will be running a Intro to Creo class in September. Let's see if we have any questions. Shay, here's a question for you. Do you need to use WTParts in Windchill in order to use the ETRAGE solution?
Great question. The answer to that is no. You do not need to use WTParts in Windchill. So yes, if you just have Windchill primarily to store, as a PDM database, we'll call it that way. If you're just storing, PRT, ASM files or drawing files as well, yes, the ETRAGE, solution set can still handle all of that just fine. In fact, that's how we started, right? And spent, decades, right? And there are customers that have us in their production system for 2 decades already, just doing just that, right? And so the WTParts is just additional value on top of that, right?
So you're saying you can still use our publisher to export data, and you can still use our viewer for search, view, and print options without having to use WTParts inside of Windchill to do those basic functionalities.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. I have another question for you. Why do we need ETRAGE WTParts when the data and relationships already exist in Windchill?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yes. So ultimately, it's a couple of things, right? One is it's the fact that the end users of the data, right, are typically not Windchill users, right? And it would be very difficult for them to go and hunt down all the related information, right? You'll have to go through different information pages and several different clicks to go find all that information, even if they even knew what to click to begin with, right? And number two, it's the fact that when you do all that, you can't download all the related content, right, in one click, right? You have to, if there are 4 different work instructions plus a drawing and a CAD file, you have to go to 6 different pages to go download all that information, right, one by one. And so that's kind of the value of using the WTPart solution with ETRAGE is that we bring all that information to your non-PLM users and make it very easy for them to get the info they need in order to go to work.
All right. I have a couple more right now for you. We are using WTParts. Is there a way to push all released WTPart and related into the viewer system for the manufacturing department, or would this require a manual trigger in Windchill?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Great question. So for this one here, so ETRAGE, we have several different tools to do a mass publish of objects into the viewer. One of those being, I think, the bulk loader that Sinead mentioned as well, that we're doing a webinar of in a couple of weeks, right? And so, and even without the bulk loader, we have other ways of getting a mass amount of data into the viewer. And so ultimately, all we just need is a list of all the objects that you need published into the viewer, and we can easily handle that quite quickly.
All right, looks like this may be our last question. Does ETRAGE rely on Windchill Publisher?
So great question. So no, no. So the ETRAGE publisher is separate from the Windchill publisher, right? And so we can now, of course, as our publisher runs, we can take already published information that's already published from the Windchill publisher within Windchill and pull that into the ETRAGE viewer, as an example, right? But we can also publish, data, by the ETRAGE publisher itself, right? And frankly, that gives us a lot more flexibility in terms of, you can configure it to, in terms of what to publish, how to publish it, and when to publish it. And so typically we find that we use our ETRAGE publisher, right? And while still, not bogging down the Windchill publisher. So the Windchill publisher can still be used to publish, viewables, right, within Windchill, right? And our ETRAGE publisher can still publish data that can be consumed from the ETRAGE viewer.
All right, well, thank you, Shei. As we wrap up, if we can share with the audience, we did want to let you know, we did want to let you know that you can learn more about ETRAGE software and service solutions from our past webinars, as well as our website, or feel free to reach out. We'd love to start a conversation and understand how you're currently working today and how we can maybe help you work more efficient. Shay, let's go ahead and share our contact information so that they can reach out to us. And I will remind you what Shay said earlier, we do offer trials. So if you have a team that you're working with that needs to validate the solution, please reach out. We're happy to do that for you. And with that, ETRAGE will send you a link of today's webinar so that you can rewatch and share. And we will thank you one last time for attending today, and we will see you next time.